Where do you see the timelines? We've been talking of 5G in India for a long period of time. It's been almost 3 years. Now, finally, we're getting to the auctions.
Has the time come for India to embark on the 5G journey? The answer is yeah, we're getting there. Some major steps have been taken in the last 12 months by the government and the industry as a whole.
I think 5G era is not only about technology. That part finished with 4G. In case of 5G and beyond, 6G, 7G, whenever it comes, things are going to be different. It is going to be a converged world.
We are in 5G compared to where we were with 4G and 3G, where we were very late adopters of the technology. Maybe in 5G, we've made a leapfrog.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I see that men are outnumbering the ladies. I'm sure the ladies will actually add in the audience. But a very warm good morning to you all. It is getting warm now. Welcome to the 7th Smart Cities India Expo and 29th Convergence India Expo. Our session on readiness versus reality of 5G in India. Are we there yet? Under the City Leaders Conclave. Through this session, we hope to unravel where we stand and what we may. We know that 5G has the potential to transform and revolutionize the way that we do business and go about our everyday lives. It has tremendous potential, but the real transformation or impact will depend on seamless execution. It is imperative that the key stakeholders rededicate their efforts in making sure the execution matches its promise. So are we there yet? I think there are several steps in this journey that will make the evidence the success of the execution. Let me lay these out simply in my humble way. First, 5G is nothing without the spectrum. We understand that the spectrum auctions will happen sometime mid of this year. As of now, the statements mention that this will happen sometime in May. In India, the airwaves in several bands are said to be auctioned between 526 to 698 megahertz, 700, 800, 900, various bands. Then it goes up to 2.5, 2500 megahertz, 3300, and then in gigahertz sections. It's also expected that TRI will probably lower down the reserve price given the experience of last year's spectrum auction. The next big thing is the setting of the standards and whether these are harmonized globally. 5GI is the first ever telecom technology standard from India that will find its place in global telecom gear standards for 5G services. Global Standards Development Body 3GPP has agreed to a plan of action that will allow the merger of 5GI into 5G. The merger will facilitate 3GPP to support all markets with a single solution that will permit 5G to evolve globally. Next up, investments and device availability for 5G. TRI has obviously talked about the PLI scheme for telecom equipment is set to spur manufacturing ecosystem in India, attracting large-scale investments to the market. The need to deploy and scale 5G use cases will require significant changes in network infrastructure, and the investment in India itself is expected to touch over $25 billion. A lot of operators have obviously announced their plans for 5G investments and the related ecosystem in India. Then we have PM's Gati Shakti plan that targets to cut logistic costs, increase cargo handling capacity, and reduce turnaround time. The government under this program is expected to spend about 50,000 crores to create 500 multimodal cargo terminals during the next 4 to 5 years. And finally, there will be the adoption by the consumers. However, with all this, challenges still remain. Enterprises are expected to try to reserve spectrum allocation for private network use cases, while the telcos are countering this. As the country gears up for the mega auction, the industry has made an aggressive pitch to actually lower down the spectrum pricing. DOT's technical arm and the TEC, the Telecommunication Engineering Center, and COAI has opposed the idea of developing a separate standard for India. With India operating its own standards, the pace of innovation in 5G technology also needs to be seen. So these are all discussions by an amateur. Let me actually hand it over to the experts and let them deliberate on what really stands in our way for a successful execution of the 5G in India. Though they need no introduction, let me just do the honors of saying a few words about our distinguished panelists. First up, Ms. Pamela Kumar. She's the Director General, Telecommunications Standards Development Society of India, and the Bharti Chair Visiting Professor at UIET, Punjab University. Since her joining TSGSI as Director General in early 2017, TSGSI has made a mark in global standards arena with its contribution of the low mobility large cell requirement for 5G rural broadband in ITU, and later approval of its radio interface technology RIT 5GI as an IMT 2020 technology standard by the ITU. Pamela has also led various honorary positions: Vice Chair of 3GPP PCG, member of IEEE SA Nominations and Appointments Committee, Chair of the IEEE Charles Steinmetz Awards Committee, and many others. We have Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochhar. He is the Director General, Cellular Operators Association of India. Lieutenant General Dr. Kochhar is AVSM, SM, VSM, ADC, KIGA, and currently the DG of COI, as I mentioned before. In 2013, he retired as the Signal Officer-in-Chief, Head of ICT Wing of the Indian Army. He was responsible for planning, executing, and operating all telecom and IT networks of the Army. Prior to that, he was the Additional Director General Personnel of the Indian Army, handling HR and empowerment of 11 lakh strong Indian Army. He was the CEO of Telecom Sector Skill Council from December 13 to December 19. He holds a PhD and MTech from IIT Delhi, 2 MPhils, and has also published a book and authored several articles. Last but not the least, we have P. Balaji, the Chief Regulatory and Corporate Accounts Affairs Officer at Vodafone India Limited. Mr. Balaji is a member of the National Leadership Team and leads the company's regulatory, public policy, and government relations activities, along with the industry advocacy, corporate communications, reputation management, and CSR. He spent over 2.5 decades in telecom and IT, handling diverse functions include sales, marketing, strategy, operations, and product management. He has also held senior leadership positions in startup and turnaround ventures of Tata Group, AT&T, Ericsson, Lucent, and Sony, gaining rich experience and exposure to emerging digital landscape. He is also the chairperson of ASSOCHAM's National Council on Telecommunications and Convergence, and a member of National Council of Apex Industry Chambers like CII, FICCI, etc. So without much ado, I'll actually jump into the questions, and if you'd allow me, I'll just sit with the rest of the panelists. I've been given a lovely situation where I'm on the right side of the lady on the panel, which is always better than to be on the left side or the wrong side.
I don't really understand what that implies.
So I'll dive right into the questions, and firstly, welcome, ma'am, sir. It's lovely to have your august presence on this panel, and I don't think so we could have, got together a panel which is more qualified to actually talk on the subject. So I'll start with the industry readiness for 5G rollout. And this is a question to Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochhar and to Balaji. Where do you see the timelines? We've been talking of 5G in India for a long period of time. It's been almost 3 years. Now, finally, we're getting to the auctions. And could you also reflect on what could be the key investment requirements at this point of time? While I did highlight some of them, but your real point of view, being the practitioners in the industry.
Thank you so much, Shobhit, to you and also to Exhibitions India for organizing this timely summit. Probably just pull this closer. So I think the question is very valid. Has the time come for India to embark on the 5G journey? The answer is yeah, we're getting there. Some major steps have been taken in the last 12 months by the government and the industry as a whole. Number one, if I just step back a little bit, a few years ago, there was a high-level committee which actually looked at what does it take for India to be on the cutting edge of 5G. And some of the things that were talked about was beyond the network readiness, device ecosystem to be put in place, startup ecosystem to be put in place in order to ensure that enterprise and consumers can get the benefit, and governance can also go smarter with the advent of 5G technology. In the last 12 months, we've had the licenses for trials given by the Government of India to the operators. Vodafone Idea and the other operators have actually set up trials. We ourselves did our trials in Pune and Gandhinagar, where several use cases were on display and widely appreciated in terms of its impact. We had smart surveillance, we had smart cities, we had connected health services, we had connected education, we had drone-based services, we had a lot of startups that were identified actually through the process of the government and industry interaction through IMC, where we actually highlighted about the work which is being done by about 80 to 100 startups. We took some of them and gave them the platform and the network, and we had magic in terms of the application that came up both on the enterprise industry vertical as well as on the consumer side and on governance. And so to my mind, they have again created the right kind of conversation and opportunities for use cases which are India specific. The second thing that the government has done, which is significant, is announced a very, very far-reaching policy in September 2021. After 20 plus years, a massive reform package was rolled out in order to make sure that structural reforms were undertaken, procedural reforms were put in place, and also financial and liquidity related issues which everybody was seeing the industry was facing was being dealt with. So very bold reforms which have been put in place, and the government in fact is being very progressive and talking about the next stage of reforms to put in place. All of these are important because when you have low cost of deployment and more faster deployment, then 5G can take place faster. Clearly, from a coverage point of view, we need another 500,000 to 1 million more small cells to put in place. And having the right-of-way policies and the right kind of framework for implementation of network rollout is very important, and this government seems to be extremely focused on that particular initiative. We hope that in the quarters to come, it will set the right kind of momentum for 5G networks to be set up. Then, of course, the third topic which comes about is on the issue of spectrum itself. I think, again, this government in the last few years has ensured that they've been having very constructive conversations between space, defense, and telecom, and through a whole consultation process by working with standards bodies, by working with other administrations outside India, they've come to a very good, should I say, roadmap which talks about which spectrums ought to come up. So they're very clear that in the mid bands, they've got some spectrum coming up in the 33 to 3700. They talk about millimeter band. They've also identified E and V band from a backhaul point of view. We hope, as the industry has requested the government and the regulator, that these auctions, given that there was a spectrum, given that there was a recent liquidity package which was rolled out, it's important that that context be kept in mind when the auctions take place. Auctions ought to take place, but the request from the industry is significantly lower reserve prices than before, some moratorium and not upfront payment, and also to ensure that the backhaul E and V band spectrum is also put in the auction by bundling it or by offering it in the auction. The benefit of that is very clear, that the monies that are then conserved by the industry can go into putting the 5G networks in place. And when that happens, automatically you end up having the huge multiplier effect for the economy. There are fantastic Indian companies that are putting up their own 5G stack, and Pamela can talk a lot more about it. She's been in the thick of things with TSDSI in that particular domain. So when you have multinational companies setting up shop in India, when you have Indian companies with 5G stack, then the cost of rollout can be reduced. Networks can be rolled out faster if the spectrum outflow of cash flow is not there. And the benefit for India from a multiplier effect on the economic growth as well as on the startup ecosystem that will give huge employment will also be met. So in a way, I've given a long answer. I think one last statistic which the government itself has identified in its national digital communication policy, where they said about $100 billion of investment is required. So if more money is there in a stressed sector to invest into networks and invest into innovation, the better services can be rolled out. So again, to summarize, great steps taken by the government and the industry. The policy in September, very progressive, and the right steps taken for easing the liquidity stress. The spectrum being given for trial purposes, and the wonderful use case that have been deployed by operators such as Vodafone Idea and all the other operators for that matter. And the third is a little bit of temperance in terms of the spectrum auctions, so that the money can go into the networks rather than being sucked away by way of very high prices. So these were the three things that I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Balaji has said almost everything that COI has to do as an association. So really speaking, on that point, I only can say that I ditto what he's saying. But having spent 2 years in COI, I think that the question which has been posed could not have been in a better platform than in Convergence India. Why? I think 5G era is not only about technology. That part finished with 4G. Right? In 4G, you roll out networks, you provide whatever has to be provided, and then leave it there, and then the other businesses take over. In case of 5G and beyond, 6G, 7G, whenever it comes, things are going to be different. It is going to be a converged world. And convergence is not only going to be in technology. The pillars of convergence that are essential for this ecosystem to survive or grow and survive are policy, regulation, business practices, business solutions, and then technology. These, and I'm not naming the other ones like mindset and manpower, etc. That will follow in the wake. Let me take each one of them, whether we have progressed towards them or not. As far as technology is concerned, networks is concerned, Balaji has very aptly described the situation as it pertains today. A lot of work to be done. A lot of work has been done. We are very hopeful that things will work out very well as far as that front is concerned. But pardon my saying, Balaji, that is the least of our problems. That will happen anyway. Okay. The more problematic area is if we strategically sort of look at the environment. In technology, the convergence has taken place in ICT, EC. What do I mean by that? Information communication technology, electronics, and cyber. No application today can work without these being together. Have they converged in policy? No. They have converged inadvertently? Yes. Advertently? No. How do I say that? If you look at policymakers, there are different ministries, different departments handling each one of these components. IT is handled by somebody else, telecom is handled by somebody else, electronics by somebody else, cyber by somebody else. So how do you expect this environment to merge and come out with normalized policy formulation? Inadvertently, how it has happened is the minister happens to be the same for IT and telecom. So it has converged inadvertently. Maybe advertently, I don't know. The secretary, not by design but by default, is holding both charges of electronics and telecom. But that is not by design again. This has to come by design. And if it comes by design, then at least the policy part is taken care of. Now, coming to the regulator, there a lot of work has happened by design. IT has come under his purview. Telecom is already under him. Broadcasting has come under his purview. Cyber is still not his purview. But he has inroads into cyber. So therefore, some amount of conscious effort has happened at the regulator level where all these have converged. Okay. The third is business practice. Is now you see increasingly within the corporate itself, the rollouts which are happening are not purely telecom. The 5G characteristics by themselves are such that it gives flexibility and adaptability. And because of this flexibility and adaptability, obviously software has to be part of it, a major part of it. So IT has become a part of the network rollout itself. And on top of that, when applications come, they will perform using software. So how can these be separate? They have to be provided a security cover which can no longer be inorganic. It cannot be an overlay over the networks. It has to be organically grown, and therefore that has to be looked into. That is unfortunately not being looked into, and the moderator's field is risk analysis. So he knows that how cyber will affect the entire formulations. Okay. As far as technology is concerned, this is an opportune moment for me to say that up to 4G, it was the networks which were leading, no longer. In 5G, it will be the applications which will be leading. Applications will come and tell the telcos, hey, listen, I want this. This is my requirement for my business. Will you be able to do it within the policy constraints? Telco will have to do it because 5G will permit it to be done. The network slicing, the edge computing, and things of that nature will help the telco to formulate and clearly make an offering for the business to run as demanded by business, not as provided by telco. That is going to be a very major difference. And when we go from beyond 5G, this is going to continue. So the need of the hour today is not to look at whether we are ready only in technology sphere. We are ready. There's no gainsaying that. There will be bumps on the way. But as far as the entire ecosystem is concerned, you can draw your own conclusion. It has to be looked at consciously and not subconsciously. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just I was sitting in my fool's paradise thinking that I could have enumerated a lot of those things. I have Lieutenant General Dr. Kochhar, can I say, sir, you've thrown the cat among the pigeons by saying that, this is convergence, and rightly so. That means that when you converge a lot of the ecosystem, all of the weaknesses of that really converge and aggregate into this. So this problem is much larger than only the ones that I was talking about. And he talked about how interministerial, interoperability, intersectoral standards have to be merged together. Cyber will be a challenge. Balaji actually mentioned a very good point about startup ecosystem. It's all going to be about applications. And in applications, you need to have a very vibrant startup ecosystem to be able to support, to be able to actually proliferate and therefore sustain this. So there you are, that's really the beauty of having such a distinguished panel, because, the harmony of information that you get is fantastic. I'll just switch gears and I'll move on to the other side, to Madam Kumar. Ma'am, regarding standards, this is where this will define almost everything, whether it be the harmonization, whether it be the device availability, how we as operations or consumers, when we go out in the outside world, really link into the others, to the other operators, etc. They are the key starter. And given the status that we have today, have we done enough? One, what has been the progress, and what do you see is the critical aspects that still remain to be done to really get this into the execution mode?
Thanks for those questions. So let me first acknowledge that what Balaji said about the readiness, okay, that we are in 5G compared to where we were with 4G and 3G, where we were very late adopters of the technology. Maybe in 5G we've made a leapfrog, okay. And then General Kochhar talked about convergence that 5G represents, and ideally the convergence that is happening in 5G, maybe it needs to be all the, all in capital, the CEO and W, all of them need to be, need to be in capital. That's the level of convergence that's happening in 5G, right? Because in 4G, it was IT coming and telecom coming together, but now it's, it's about applications. As General Kochhar said, it's about the end use cases. It's all the whole paradigm shift is towards use cases. So it's really a big turning point or a paradigm shift that 5G is bringing into this world of technology. The boundaries of different technologies are blurring. They're all coming together. whether you put drones or IoT or artificial intelligence, they're all merging together and building the solutions. You cannot really differentiate them separately the way we used to earlier. So, and what is making this happen? Okay, this world of standards where all the people who are developing these technologies converge together and try to drive consensus in order to enable the deployment of these technologies. So if we see this leapfrog, so let me make a kind of maybe a little controversial statement here, and we say this often in our office, that the one who rules standards rules the world. Okay. So,
Ma'am, if I may say, sorry to interrupt you, it's not a controversial statement. I think historically this has been the truth. So it is what it is.
And I think that realization is slowly seeping in our world here. Okay, and you see the impact of that. This whole journey, what Balaji is saying, it all started because DOT came to TSDSI and said, what are we doing? What are you doing about 5G? What do you want to do about 5G? Right? And we need to create a 5G forum in India. We need to get everybody together and talk. And as late as 2018, the world had started the vision document of 5G in ITU was completed in 2013. In 2018, DOT and TSDSI were trying to architect this 5G forum. But at least we did. The first workshop was, that 13th floor of DOT was overwhelmed to its capacity. Okay, we had a workshop and we had 80-90 people in that room. There was so much enthusiasm about it that DOT is talking about 5G, right? And we enabled that. So we brought together all the key stakeholders, and the journey started. We started looking at different aspects, and today we are at a stage where all these issues, trials are happening, and things are being addressed, and everybody has come together. A lot of dialogue has happened, and that's one aspect to it. The other aspect is, for the first time, we have the confidence in this country that yes, we can become Atmanirbhar in these technologies. And that confidence also comes from our standard journey, right? Way back in 2016, some of our academicians who said that 5G should also address the needs of the rural, right? And the rural use cases were not addressing India's needs. What was rural use case in 5G talking about? It was talking about 500 km/h bullet trains going through the villages. So the guy who starts in a city with a 5G connection, when he's going through the village, his quality of connection should not go. Or expressways at 125 km/h with cars and other vehicles zooming through, those expressways, the connectivity should not get disrupted. Those were the rural use cases. And we say, what in India, 70% of our population lives in the village. We want to ensure 5G connectivity, high quality to them at a price point, at metrics or specifications which make sense to them, which they need, meeting their needs, meeting their requirements. And that's what that famous LMLC, the low mobility large cell requirement, was embedded into the ITU specification. And later on, the technology, the innovation that would enable that, which was again done by our academicians, and with a lot of discussion and involvement with industry, was submitted as a specification at ITU. It got approved there, and finally, as of yesterday, it has formally been incorporated in 3GPP. So a big contribution in 3GPP standards, that our 5G, so-called 5GI, is becoming merged into mainstream 5G, so that the needs of the rural and the needs of the urban will jointly get met by 5G. So that's one. So that's the role that standards can play. It can really convert all this innovation and ideas that you may do in your silos and you may dream. If you want to make it a reality, you have to bring it to the standards platform. And I want to conclude with saying that if you are making an impact in standards, right, what it takes, it's a very clear metric. Like, you know, if you win so many medals in Olympics, it says about the ecosystem. If you get a World Cup, it means that there is an ecosystem that you have created, right? It means a lot more than just going there and getting the World Cup, right? There's a lot more that has. So similarly, if you are able to have a certain percentage of standard essential patents, or your contributions, your influence in standards is strong, it means that you are globally competitive. Your industry is capable of developing technology which will be accepted in the global marketplace, which will, you know, which can be, you are rightfully sure you can, you know, have a global market share. Your ecosystem is ready to embrace and adopt new technologies. Otherwise, you will always be the laggard in which we have always been. And that readiness for adoption means that you contributed your requirements, you contributed your use cases early in the journey in standard. Then only you will be ready to be the first early adopter of new technology. Right. Okay. And the third angle of global competitiveness is the research and development. The R&D and the innovation and the investment that you've done there is headed in the right direction. You may be investing in R&D, but it may be going into publications and you know, all kinds of esoteric blue sky research which never sees the light of the day. But if your R&D is directed towards being impactful and making a difference, then you will be impacting standards with that R&D. So if you want to play in standards, you have to build these 3 pillars and become globally competitive. Then only you can win in standards. So standards is like the World Cup or the Olympics, in which it takes a lot to be able to win. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, thanks for enumerating that in this manner, because generally people don't understand. You know, it's when it comes to standard, people just think it's a rule book. Why don't there are innumerable rule books that are available? Why can't we use the historical examples, collate it together and put it there? But the fact is, it's a lot more complicated, and it takes a lot more than just fancy flying to actually get that on the board. But let me also just hold on a moment, and let me actually, you know, give a round of applause for the fact that we have finally been adopted onto the global stage. So thank you. I think it really requires a round of applause. For once, we have a truly global aspect, which we can proudly say is sourced and originated in India, the 5GI. You know, everyone's heard of the aircraft, Su-30 aircraft, right? It's designated as MKI, and MK is the export version, and I represents that it's the Indianized version. So similarly, we have a standard which is Indianized version. So thank you, ma'am, for that. I think you know, the society has done a tremendous job at getting those standards up there. And in fact, what I just also wanted to bring out is that, like we were saying, you know, for all of these to intermingle, and there's actually one very interesting fact, and it may be from a different industry, from the airline industry. I remember when the A380 was being introduced, you will not believe there were 2 parts of the aircraft being assembled in different parts of Europe. And the wiring, which is almost 100,000 kilometers in total length, the color scheme being used by one assembler and the other assembler did not match, because they had not standardized themselves. And that led to almost 6 months of delay, because they had to rewire the entire aircraft. So exactly to your point, if I may. So I'll get on to the next one. You know, this will, if you are to get convergence, you will need the startup ecosystem. You will need collaboration across sectors. You will need collaboration across the different parts of the ecosystem. And I'll request Lieutenant General Dr. Kochhar and Balaji and Madam Kumar to just reflect on where they see the opportunities between solution providers and network operators to ensure a successful rollout. Where do you see other collaboration opportunities or the key aspects that you think are important? Please.
Okay. before Balaji actually tells you about the trials and what all use cases have come about, I will like to talk a little bit about theory of how we visualize 5G will bring out use cases, and that the maximum amount of revenues will flow from enterprise business rather from B2C. And this is what we've been talking about in all seminars and in all forums. But when I went along with Balaji and the team, Gopal Mittal, to Barcelona this time, we had opportunity to interact with international players who have rolled out 5G in various other countries and who had a better experience than India has had so far on the commercialization of 5G. And to our surprise, what came out very clearly was that all the projections they were making about enterprise earnings have not really taken off the way they were expected to take off. And one of the major players, I won't name gave his name, but he even went to the extent of saying that 95% of our business comes from consumers and only 5% so far is enterprise. So that is where we are as far as revenues are concerned, and we are now going back to DOT and telling them that please keep this in mind, because when you tax us and when you price the spectrum based on the fact that you think that there are a huge amount of profits that will accrue to TSPs in the initial years, it is not going to happen in that manner. Maybe later, when the ecosystem catches up, when Industry 4.0 comes in, production capabilities increase, then things will slowly start picking up. But the indicators are that they are not going to go at the rate at which we expected. And it will be consumer business initially which is going to rule the roost. Having said that, India is, I would say, in a better position that we didn't have to discover zero. You see, when you are the first starter in new technology, then there are many ups and downs, and you waste a lot of money and effort trying to navigate through those roadblocks that we didn't have to face in 5G. Because people say we are a late starter. I'm saying it's better to be a late starter and learn from others' mistakes rather than get right in front and then have a problem with that technology. Okay, there are many technologies, and some of the people are sitting here who brought in technology which had a lot of promise but didn't take off. So it would have been disastrous had we been in the as the front runners in that. But that doesn't mean that we should not be front runners in the following technology, because 5G and beyond is a different family of technologies which are bringing different applications. And what we learned in 5G, we don't have to relearn in 6G. So that is the manner of saying that in 6 and 7G, we should and we can be the front runners. Okay, so but a lot of work has been initiated by the government and the operators, and there is a lot of vision in the trials which have been ordered by the government and carried out by the operators. And I leave it to Balaji to explain to you the areas in which there has been a huge amount of success in trials carried out by the operators, especially Vodafone. Balaji.
Thank you, General Kochhar. I guess 2 or 3 broader topics to cover. The important thing is collaboration is the key for success as far as 5G and beyond goes. It's deeply enshrined in our ways of working and our strategy as an organization. Right through the journey of 4G and even now as we prepare for 5G, that's been the cornerstone. When you look at consumers, we look at where their needs are, what is it that is core competence that we have, and what is it that we can bring as solutions to them from a partnership point of view. So we've already recently launched a very, very compelling proposition on music. We've now got gaming. We're talking about many other new applications that we believe are going to be changing the lives and adding huge amount of value to our consumers. And so partnership is already part of our DNA, and we only expect this to go up further. In our 5G trials, a lot of those that got should I say, eyeballs and also got interest were those where we either worked with startup ecosystem or that we worked with a lot of industry leaders, enterprise customers that Vodafone Idea has, and we together figured out that there are many such real life situations that today 4G does not allow to get done, but there is a solution that is waiting out there with the low latency and high bandwidth provided by 5G that we could bring into place. The use of digital twins, the use of a lot of such applications in order to navigate very difficult situations and be able to use AR, augmented reality, virtual reality as a means to solve real life industrial problems in a very, very compelling manner was something that we could demonstrate. And that was only possible because we were working very closely with our enterprises, our customers, to understand what problems they were facing, whether it was on the efficiency side, whether it was on reducing downtime, whether it was on enhancing revenues, a bunch of things that we looked at. Likewise, collaboration with the government. Because today, if you see, what the government has done is created a lot of platforms. Okay, and so how do we basically bring these platforms together for larger good? So if there's a smart grid, how do we make it better? If there's a need for bringing smart agri practices in order to make sure that small farmlands, 1 hectare, 3 acres, 2 acre kind of farmers can get the benefit that otherwise only comes from scale. So can we work on those kind of aspects, right? So we worked not just by ourselves, but with some technology providers, with some best practice that we got from other parts of the world, and with even social sector partners to create very compelling sensor-based, IoT-based, and in the future drone-based solutions that in the smart agri space will have huge impact. On surveillance, working with municipalities to arrive at what is it that people are looking for. How do we make our streets safe for women? How do we ensure that there is monitoring without intrusion? All of these are broader topics that cannot be answered by a telecom player, but their understanding and being a catalyst for those kind of conversations to arrive at the right business model, the right kind of solutions, goes a long way to actually allow India to kind of provide the kind of leadership in 5G from a use case point of view. So to my mind, collaboration is the only way forward. And to my mind, I have no doubt that with the way that the government and the industry verticals are actually open to collaboration, open to new business models, that this will only grow in the future and further, write a lot of stories that will be very initially India specific, but that will find a lot of compelling applications in other parts of the world as well. And for us not to repeat the mistakes of other parts of the world is something that General Kochhar talked about, and I agree with him totally.
Thank you, Balaji. Ma'am, can I switch over to your side? Again, we are hearing the same thing about all the things converging. There will be collaboration. With collaboration, there'll be a need to standard. And because standard will help you get to a certain level, which will be a level playing field. Where do you see that important from a standard?
Let me give the standards view on this, okay? So let's just understand for a moment what happens in 3GPP. So 3GPP has 16 working groups, right? I think 6 of them in RAN, another 6 in SA, which is the systems architecture, and then I think 4 or so in CT, which is the core technologies, right? So RAN is the radio access network, the systems architecture, and the core technologies. These 16 working groups, there are more than 1,000 organizations which are members of 3GPP. Okay, these 1,000 organizations contribute their best technical brains. It's the guys sitting in their research labs who are bringing their innovations for discussion, right? So release 15 and release 16 and now release 17, which is addressing the first release of 5G, okay, have been in discussion all along the 2010 to 2020 journey, And now that we have release 17, what have they been able to? They meet every month. Some of the RAN groups are over 1,000 people in one room. Okay? And we were being asked to host the 6 RAN meetings simultaneously, a RAN mega meeting as we call it, in parallel. It would have been more than 2,500 people, delegates we would have had to host to run the one set of RAN, which happens every month. Okay, so every month there are more than, I would say, 3,000 to 4,000 people coming together and deep technical. The meeting starts, every meeting is at 1 week. So from morning till night, and sometimes till midnight, they fight till they converge, till they get a consensus on something. Okay, that's the kind of meetings that go on, right? And that's the kind of discussion, debate that has been going on these just to converge on one of the. So ITU had defined the 5G vision. There are 3 legs. There is EMBB, there is MMTC, machine type communication, and there is URLLC, ultra reliable and low latency. 15, 16 and 17 have just addressed EMBB. What is EMBB? EMBB is an advanced 4G. The real new innovation of 5G, all these applications and all this vision is going to come from MMTC and URLLC. These have not been fully thought out and incorporated into the standards yet. That's why 5G Advanced has already been announced. And release 18 and release 19 the focus is completely, the agenda for release 18 was just frozen last December. Release 19, they're beginning to invite agenda topics, right? So release 18 and release 19, which will incorporate 5G Advanced, will make all the 5G magic come to life. EMBB is not going to cut it. No operator is going to make the money that they're envisioning. There's going to be no business case until it goes into the verticals and makes those magical use cases happen. For those magical use cases that everybody's been imagining, it will happen only when URLLC and MMTC standards get done. Otherwise, they'll just stay in pilot mode. They cannot be commercialized. So please join hands in the release 18 and release 19 meetings if you want to make the real 5G happen and you want to, participate in all the magic and excitement that 5G will make happen.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about India only or about the subcontinent. It is all about the globe and the various sectors. So you can well imagine now, the enormity of the situation is really dawning on me, despite being in TMT for about 2 decades. But it also makes me relive the saying that I've heard, ma'am. पुरानी saying है कि एक मयान में 2 तलवार नहीं रह सकती. यहाँ पे तो 2500 तलवारें थी, जैसे आपने कहा. So it's a daunting task, and actually hats off to you and all the people who are trying to harmonize these things. So thank you for that. I know I'm conscious of the time and we need to probably wrap up in the next 5 to 7 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll try and request each of you to probably summarize what you think are the 2 or 3 key imperatives. And before that, from a commercialization point of view, I think that's been another thing, and we are seeing systems are evolving, standards are being harmonized. There's still so much to go. Commercialization is what is finally going to be, what they say, when the rubber hits the road, that's going to be the final test. And with so much money being invested, people will want to see that return. So commercial use cases for 5G have been a very hotly debated topic, both within the sector and within the operator community and with the regulators, etc. But first, a quick view from all 3 speakers on where do they see as the emerging commercial cases, and then if they can wrap it up to say what are the 2 key imperatives as they see it from where they stand. So I'll start with General Kochhar, then Madam Kumar, you, and then Balaji, if you can please round it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobhit. Thank you very much. This summing up in 2 bullet points is quite a difficult thing. But
So I've had my challenge. I'm now throwing it back to you.
okay, the thing is that we have to see that 5G is a different paradigm altogether. Here, the way of doing business here, the rules of the game have changed. It is not going to be the way it was earlier. Like you said, एक म्यान में दो तलवार नहीं रह सकती, now रहेंगी, और बहुत सारी रहेंगी. So that is something we have to accept, and we have to start working in that manner. And I'm glad to say that the government of India and the present dispensation in DOT, a very proactive and a very knowledgeable minister who is supplemented with a very energetic and ready to do things secretary, is making things happen. And this is being supported by a chairman Try, who is very open to suggestions from the public. So this is an environment which has not happened earlier, and this is something which is happening very well. And government very well realizes that convergence is going to play the key role. And you can see an example coming out, small example, but Gati Shakti is an example, right? Now, as far as operators are concerned, our concern is, let us do things in a cost-effective manner, and don't look at the TSPs as a cash cow anymore. The revenues that you are going to get from the industries that survive on the 5G cloud will be 100 and 1,000 times more than what you can get out of us now. So let us grow, and for the nation that will be the best thing to happen. So these are some of the things that are going to happen, and this is my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you, General Kochhar. Ma'am, your view, please.
Yeah. So I would conclude with the, stepping back at the statement that you said, that what is left and what is the way ahead, right? So if you look at what we did in 5G, right? I draw this analogy with, I just saw the movie 83, okay, on Star Gold the other day. So the analogy is very apt. We just landed in this 5G meeting. Okay, these guys came, some professors were there, and I had just taken this job, and I was told you need to be there. I didn't even know what the meeting was. I land there, and then some other people, some government people have come to discuss spectrum, and we bring them into our meeting. We just landed there, and we were trying to figure out what to do. Okay, and we got the LMLC specification done in 2 meetings, and then we went to the next meeting. So every 4 months we will make 1 step forward and 1 step backward, and then go get Zimbabwe and Uganda to support us, and then Maldives to support us, and sometimes Russia will come and support us. Not the right word to say right now, but that's how we moved every step of the way. Maybe the semi-final was when in 2020 we got ITU recognized 5GI as a spec, and the final is now that we've got it merged in 3GPP. So that's been the one-off that we came back with a kind of a World Cup, right? But what we need to do is we need to institutionalize this, right? It shouldn't take another 20 years for us to get the next World Cup, right? Okay. So how do we institutionalize our participation in standards? How do we make it part of the R&D ecosystem, that every project that gets funded in academia in the technology space has a standards angle to it? Standards-driven research. We are driving this agenda of standards-driven research. How do we make sure that our operators, our technology developers, our startups are all committing some key talent to participate in, to contribute in standards? How do we lower the barriers for their participation and create a mass? So one big move that we have done in TSDSI, working with DOT, with support from DOT, we have lowered the barriers for joining 3GPP. We have, tried to reduce the fees drastically. We've actually been able to get grants for some of them so that they need not pay the fees of 3G and will be able to participate. The hybrid, the virtual meetings is also giving them, we're putting in a lot of effort, 3GPP, 1M, 2M, ITU, to enable people to be part of this activity. So making it, what can you say, cost effective, right? For people to participate in the standards game. Otherwise, participating in a global game is very costly. Yes. So we're trying to make it cost effective. So that's really the analogy here, that if we have already started in 6G, we've started from day one. The first call that was made at ITU for the vision of 6G, for technology trends, our members of TSDSI put together their vision and contributed, right? So at least we are there on the table from day one. But to sustain this and to really make a sizable impact, we need to really institutionalize, and that requires the academia, the startups, the industry, the operators, and the government, all of us to come together and make some fundamental shifts.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll shift to Balaji very quickly, sir. Your concluding remarks.
I think 2 or 3 very small points. Number one, you spoke about commercialization. The objective should be clear and everybody needs to pull in the same direction. If you want to have 5G, you need to have 85% of the towers fiberized, or you need to make sure that E and V band is made available in order to make sure that backhaul is there. Otherwise, you've got a problem. Number two, what it means is you've got to also have significant enhancements and not just the existing 700 to 800,000 towers, but also add another 500 to 600,000 towers more, which are small micro cells. These are large goals, and alignment. The government is at the central level very clear. The approach of engaging state governments and local administrations to ensure that they don't view telecom services as a means to enhance revenue, but actually a necessity to make the change that we want to see in India. So if you just take these two goals and make sure the cost and the time for executing on these two big goals is made very simple and very cost effective, then we ensure that digital highways are put in place. Without digital highways, you have nothing. So I think that's step number one. And then the second part is about what we've already spoken about. Collaboration is the key. Understanding what your core competence is and focusing on that, and having an open mindset to ensure that in the governance space, in the enterprise space, in the consumer space, a lot of plethora of applications are out there for consumers, enterprise and government to make sure they come to fruition. And everyone will then be able to get a slice of it. And therefore, and the last bit, of course, is if $100 billion investment has to take place, and a significant amount that is going to be on the providers of digital highways, then you cannot have the financial stress that we have in the sector today. That needs to improve, because if you don't have the fundamentals of a digital highway, then there's no benefit of 5G or 6G for anybody. So I think you rightly said that those are important points, but I'm hopeful that with this government and their resolve, with this industry and the companies that are now in place, the market structure in place, all of these things will happen in times to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'll just conclude on this while you've heard all of this, ladies and gentlemen. But I'll just pick up 3 words, if I may. One, as ma'am said, institutionalize. Second, which both the other speakers also mentioned very clearly, is commercialization and the ability to do that. Let us not treat this as a cash cow. Let us make sure that it helps develop, because there are tremendous benefits at the end of it. We have light at the end of the tunnel, ladies and gentlemen. We need to be Atmanirbhar, and this is a fantastic foray for us to do that. So with that, I'd really say a big load of thanks to all the 3 panelists, Madam Kumar, General Kochhar, Balaji, for sharing the views. I know we are out of time. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, the speakers. Thank you so much for, I know we are delayed, but well, we started late. I have to give you this much time. So thank you so much. Before we close this session, I would like our director, EI Group, Mr. Dhruv Bahl, to give out mementos to our speakers. First, we would like, with the ladies first this time, Ms. Pamela. Mr. Shobhit Agarwal. Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochhar. And last but not the least, Mr. P. Balaji. Can we have a group photo, please?